So welcome once more. I'm just going to share my screen so that we can see so that you guys can get to see the report that we completed last year. The aim, so what we tried to do last year was essentially better understand how Cameroon's agriculture policy has developed over the last 60 years since independence. So um, these are all of the organizations at the time who took part in this report, and we submitted this report to a bunch of policymakers, civil administrators, etc. Obviously, the writing was led by CEPI, but we acknowledge the contribution of each and every organization. And most of the sessions that we held, we used some of the conclusions and some of the recommendations in here. So I'm going to send this in the group just so that we can take a proper look. And but it's really, really comprehensive. Contributions to we look at contributions to various aspects of the agriculture value chain. So from seeds to how to call this, from seeds to other types of material and other types of support. We also separated them based on the contributions from each ministries, because what we found is that most policymakers they themselves don't really understand what's going on, because there are a plethora of programs. And so in some instances, it creates a form of duplicity. And in other instances, it's just difficult for us to coordinate because there's a very, very limited understanding, I should say, on, the composition of expenditure and how it needs to change going forward. So this is available on CEPI's website. I am on CEPI's website. I am equally going to share a link on our WhatsApp group so that everybody has access to it. The aim is that in order for us to really influence anything, we we have to make sure that we have the evidence and we have the proof about what we're proposing. So if we're trying to move from our cash crop exports is still very much driven by the public sector, I should say. And so, as we're aware, recently 25 agro manufacturing companies were selected and they were given some financial support. But those are some of the things that we adequately challenge, because it seems the process is wholly arbitrary. So we have to now make sure that the levels and types of support that agro entrepreneurs get in the Southwest, in the Northwest, in the far North are equivalent to what those in, the metropolitan cities equally get. So I'm not going to go too much about this, but I encourage each and every one of us to just take a look at the report. We look at how various parastatals are contributing to, economic development, what are the challenges they face in terms of financing and capacity, because we still produce only about 10% of the rice that we really need in Cameroon. So again, our policy recommendations were two-pronged. And yeah, I'm going to I'll send this link again to the group just so that everybody has access to it. This year, the only thing we can do, given I should say, the time constraint, is we can complete one brief that briefly talks about something that is something that's a bit more actionable. But next year, I was hoping that we can do something that's a bit more comprehensive, that really considers what the main challenges agro entrepreneurs face and how we can go about meeting those challenges where they are. So that's a bit about what we've done so far. I think, and also we at CEPI are currently applying to a few grants so that we can start meeting in person. But before we meet, I think it's important that we have modus operandi that's a bit more stable and consistent with our goals. So today really was for myself to listen to you guys and to see how we can potentially work together going forward. So everyone has the floor.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my name is Stella Achu, and I am sitting in Fondef. One of the things I didn't have access to was the report of the meeting of last year, and I'm just hoping that what I have here to present is not, from what you just said, it seemed like it will be a kind of duplicity of what was done last year. Because given the topic to boost the cassava value chain sustainably, I looked at the main challenges
Okay.
that plague smallholders, small scale producers. So yeah, I looked at excuse me, 1 second. I looked at on a general note, the cassava value chain is a set of activities which include cultivation, harvesting, processing, and marketing. It includes various stakeholders such as farmers, processors, wholesalers, retailers, transporters, machine manufacturers, and marketers. The goal here is to improve food security, increase income support to local industries, and for created value added to the products. Traditional processing techniques of cassava are not efficient, are labor intensive, low labor productivity, and not cost effective. Fresh cassava is bulky and highly perishable and cannot be stored for long. It rots within 3 to 4 days after harvest. So the bulk of cassava has about 70% moisture content. That's a main issue in transformation, which not being cost effective. So transportation costs from farmers' fields to their homes for processing, it's very it's very difficult given the nature of the roads and extremely expensive. So I was able to identify some very specific challenges for smallholders. You have inputs, you have a weak supply of agri inputs in our communities with no fertilizers, no pesticides, no reduced or limited access to pesticides and herbicides, which are used for vast majority of cassava farmers, as these products are only imported in limited volume. We do not have no climate smart irrigation systems, especially for those who are in the northern parts or very dry areas, but where cassava does very well. So according to FAO, there's a low yield as a consequence of poor quality seeds and seeds that are not adapted to our climate, especially as there's a lot of climate change these days. With the occurrence of climate change or extreme weather conditions from drought to flooding, which result in high harvest losses. Our farmers have limited plots or have limited access to land to cultivate on a large scale. And also they do they integrate other crops. So you have low access to mechanization, probably because the machines are expensive. But to palliate to this, you have small motorized hand tillers, which could be made available and which are affordable, which could be used to till these lands and reduce the cost of cultivation, which in the end increases the cost of processing or the cost of the high cost of the end product. We have also very limited access to infrastructure. I want to dwell here a bit. And infrastructure here, I look not only at storage facilities, I also look at the machines. A lot of the machines are not cost effective. The few machines that we even have are not cost effective. For example, for a cassava grating machine, you ask somebody what quantity of fuel can you use to grate an X amount of cassava. You are not told. And this is part of cost. And this is very, very important um, for the value chain. In some parts of Africa, it's very difficult to have access to some machines to ease the processing, like sieving, like peeling, which is labor intensive, washing. And so it makes, and frying, these are labor intensive portions of the process. We have the low access to mechanization makes the value chain, the cassava processing very, very challenging. And farmers are able to only cultivate very small quantities. You have the difficulty to aggregate volumes. The rate of producers structured into groups to aggregate volume is low. Our groups that we create as CIGs and cooperatives are not usually business oriented, and they do more of and they're not business oriented, and as a consequence, they produce just like anyhow and do whatever they want. Hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I
So,
hope that
but
I'm in
like,
line with, yes,
yes,
because I
absolutely.
hope I'm not duplicating what was already done.
No, not at all. Because you know that what we did before was much more general. We looked at what stakeholders were doing, what the government was doing in terms of executing an agricultural policy. So what we want to try and do now, because those projects didn't really real yield any tangible results. We didn't increase wheat, rice, milk production, cassava, plantain. We didn't increase anything by up to 20% in the last 60 years. So clearly, the policies, we're looking at it from a macro standpoint. What we want to do now is, and I think your contributions are very timely. If I can have the presentation, that would be good, so that we can prepare maybe
Yes,
like
I
a
do.
policy brief.
I'll just forward it to you when I finish. Yes, it's
Absolutely.
typed. Yes, so I'll just
So,
so as I was.
but what I want to
Mhm.
find out, what I think, like based on your expertise, we understand that there's a problem, of course, with scaling because the majority of our farmers in Cameroon are smallholders. So the majority of people who produce cassava produce, not up to 1 or 2 hectares, right? And it's not like very few people produce only cassava. It's usually produced in the context of mixed farming as well. So
Yes,
given that there's that type of fragmentation, the challenge for us now is to identify how do we scale production such that cassava can be used to make flour, it can be used to make, snacks and other things. And secondly, how do we ensure that the, how do we ensure that our farmers don't become hooked on subsidies and public support? Because elsewhere, subsidies are huge, like the United States, Europe. We have to try and make sure that our system, a system emerges where those who need help can benefit from it. But we want a system where our farmers are, independent, autonomous, and able to actually meet up with local food demand. So I was wondering whether we can think about that. And Stella, before you even finish, I don't know whether there's any contributions, because I think if we can have a few contributions and then Stella continues, that would be ideal. Mr. Pius, any contributions? If not, Stella, you have the floor. If we don't have any contributions so
Okay.
far.
Okay. Before I continue, maybe I answer some of your questions. Um, one of the problems or one of the major issues in the value chain, as I said a few minutes ago, is the mechanization process. We do not have adapted machines to process cassava to whatever is it, gari, watafufu, flour, kumkum, and the rest you can name it. We do not have adaptable machines. So we first these manufacturers of machines could be trained, to produce something very specific. If you take, for example, the cassava grating machine that you see people moving around with, if you ask somebody how many liters of fuel do you need, for example, to grate a kilogram or an X amount of kilogram of cassava, you will not be told. And you see all of these add up. How long is it going to take? All these specificities are unknown. It's pretty difficult. Um, I remember this project sponsored by UNIDO in the 80s in DOP. It was a wonderful project. These women were producing cassava and very good quality gari, and were even exporting gari to other parts, to Nigeria and some other parts, neighboring countries. A lot was being taken to Yaoundé and Douala. But their major problem was they were using this cylinder gas, and it was very, very expensive. They couldn't cope with that expense, so they had to close it. The cassava processing also is labor intensive. The peeling, the washing, and the frying are labor intensive. Even the time, all these are labor intensive. And if you were to pay someone, it only increases the cost of production of the end product. Another thing is there are many byproducts of cassava. For example, the peeling. In some places, they dry it and is used as animal feed. So these byproducts could help improve or increase our profit margin. You have the waste from in processing cassava. All that one too can be dried and processed and dried, ground, and sold for animal feed or for anything that, but usually it's for animal feed. Another problem that we are facing is we need maybe a frying machine. Now, when people fry, for example, the handling, what I'm driving at, is that the handling of the process of processing is usually very poor. And at the end of the day, our quality is not good. If you take, for example, someone who is frying gari, frying gari, you need to, when it's fried, you need to spread it somewhere to air it. If it's not air, you put it back, the next thing is it gets fermented. So it's very lifespan. One of the main reasons of processing of cassava is increased shelf life of the product. Times the shelf life is of poor handling and of the process. For even those who make water fufu, sometimes you don't even have the energy to press. You have to tie and press and keep tying and pressing. It's a lot labor intensive. And all these go to increase the cost of the end product, which people do not even have money to buy. So I'll go back to our production. In cultivating cassava, it's at least 10,000 cassava stems, cassava stems per hectare. How many farmers respect planting distances? They don't. I remember when I was working, I was working somewhere in Fumban, and I asked the people, how many people have a hectare of cassava? Everybody put their hand up. I said, like, really? Then I said, okay, I'll give 10,000 francs for anybody who really has one. I started seeing people putting their hands down. I said, who here has planted a minimum of 10,000 cuttings per hectare? Nobody. Even the smallholders we're talking about, how many are they planting? They're planting very few. They don't respect planting distances. And because they don't respect planting distances, they're involved in, you can respect planting distances and intercrop. That's not an issue. But a lot of times they don't respect planting distances. And as a consequence, the harvest per hectare is very low. It is not low because of the yield, it's low because the planting distances were not. So can you compare someone who plants 10,000 stems, cassava stems per hectare to somebody who has planted 5,000 per hectare? Of course, the 2 years are going to be different. The output is going to be
Absolutely.
different.
Yeah.
Not because the yield was low, but that the output. So we probably have to educate farmers to be able to respect cultural practices. When they respect cultural practices, they have an increased production at the end of the day. And when you have an increased production and you get engaged in processing, you don't lose. I don't know if that makes sense. You don't
Absolutely.
lose.
Absolutely.
So we start from the basics. The basics here is one of the specific challenges of small farmers is they do not respect cultural practices. And as a consequence, you always think that, oh, the varieties that have been given to us are low yielding. No, they are not. They're not low yielding. The lowest in Cameroon, I think my memory is good, is like seven tons per hectare. Certainly because of the way they plant. So if they were to plant respecting the cultural practices, even though they will have to intercrop, they're going to have a better yield, and as a consequence, will have better profits.
So
When farmers intercrop, they do not make cassava the main crop. Cassava there is not even their main crop. They usually plant in any other and then plant and prioritize something like corn, beans, and other things, which are short term. Cassava, because of its long term production, in the farm, causes farmers not to put a lot of emphasis on it. They want to produce something that is like 3, 4 months, they can harvest and have their livelihoods. So, one of the things we can encourage farmers to do is one, um, prioritize their main production, their main product. Is it cassava? Is it corn? Whatever it is, and they respect cultural practices. That is going to help them. Number two, harvesting cassava is, my dear, is labor intensive. There are simple tools that have been developed by IITA to harvest cassava on the farm. It's very simple. With that tool, you can harvest a very large portion of your farm, I mean, stress free. It's not, it's manual. So we have small tools which are not used by our farmers to enhance the quality of the product. Another issue that we have is, you wanted to say something before I continue.
I wanted to say that clearly there's an issue of capacity. But now, how do we
Yeah.
ensure that farmers respect that distancing? Because it could be twofold, right? If we're looking at it from a policy standpoint, we could say maybe they make any grants, any input contingent on farmers respecting strict standards that improve their yields. But in doing so as well, I wonder whether it would be good because more farmers will respect that. But I wonder whether we'll be excluding a lot of the a lot of the smaller producers. Mr. Jarvis, please, anyone who wants to contribute, just put up your hand and just go for it. Yeah. If we can have much more of a conversation, I think it would be better.
It will be better.
Mr. Jarvis, you have the floor. Please, give me just 1 minute.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We are doing. Yeah, I'm talking on behalf of the Brain Farmers Common Initiative Group based in Boya. Now, we've raised more of issues here than solutions. And if we are at the level of like policymakers in agriculture, like I see our name goes that we are the Cameroon Agricultural Council, and we are trying to bring up policies that will shape agriculture and increase the agricultural value chain. I think we are all what we're raising here, they are good, but our problem now is that we lack the funds probably, like what I can get it, because most farmers really want to do agriculture. But in the context of Cameroon, when money comes in, like when you meet the Ministry of Agriculture, they will tell you there is money, there is this. You really see it coming out. Maybe the newspaper will report it, and we ourselves will see it. But now, where does this money go to? And I can say that the simple reason is because we've not made ourselves being known properly by our government. I can say so. Because you see, Madam Stedal there has given a quick analysis, and all the analysis is given, they are wonderful. I am equally in like small SMEs that I see. In the SMEs, you see maybe an embassy will call somebody, and probably they will give that person maybe 1 or 2 machines. Because I just I joined the SME this year, and I'm able to see what is happening in the SME. Now, if these ambassadors can do that to maybe individuals that are new by somebody who connected them, I think we who are policymakers who are coming in, like the Cameroon Agricultural Council, we stand a better chance to achieve more results if we make ourselves available and if we make ourselves known in our ministries and in our constituencies. It means that what we adopt a different policy, different from what we've been doing, because we've advocated, we have actually brought out the problem. We see that there's a problem somewhere, and we know that in the Cameroon to have agricultural land is always difficult. You need to go maybe to a local community and you advocate. And if you are given the chance, now the problem of the funds coming. So I pray that because when you go out online, you will see grant opportunities that are given. But the fact is that they will not give you a grant that really you as a farmer. They need something like this, a policy board that we stand in. Like we can come in, like Madam Steda is saying that we say, okay, we have a training, maybe a 1-year training, a 6 months training, a 3 months training for farmers in the agricultural value chain to make them to respect the cultural diversity that we put in place in order to achieve the yields that we desire. And I think by that, it will really help us, and it will make us to go a long way. Like, we see what we can actually do in order to get these grants and implement some sort of a training we can pick up a crop and we train farmers on it, and we see what the result will be. Because if we keep talking about problems and we are not like trying to carry us anywhere, this is 2026. And I think if we are still having meetings and we are planning to have meetings next year, just like this, without something like without implementation, even I suggest that we can even meet the Ministry of Agriculture. There's no cause in trying. Meeting them as a team, and we tell them what we found, what our findings are, and what we plan to remedy, what we plan to come in to do. I think it will help us. Thank you, and over.
All right, thank you for that. I mean, I completely get your point, Mr. Jarvis. Ultimately, in order for us to be able to do much more practical work, we would need to figure out how to do that. Now, I know that some organizations are much better financed than others. And so I I think going forward, the aim is that we'll be doing things that are a bit more practical, or maybe also identifying if someone is offering a training somewhere, we could see how CEPI could partner with them to finance that kind of training so that we know that 15 farmers somewhere are actually receiving direct training. But at the level for now, I think where we can actually achieve something concrete is on the policy front, because we can train farmers on how to respect, distancing to improve yield. All of that is good. But ultimately, if these very farmers are excluded from the policy process, then it complicates any efforts that we're doing on the ground. Because each year, even if we train 1,000 smallholders, it would make a difference over time. But the real difference will come from policy incentives and policy changes, which is why I think, yes, discussing, it's also important for us to articulate the problem, because one of the challenges that we face is that we know that some problems exist, but the issue, for example, of planting and distancing, which impacts yields, it's not something that's widely known. So I think it's important for us to articulate what the issues are, what the solutions are that we're proposing, and then eventually, if and when we have the means, we can then plan to, upskill or equip 200 people or 500 smallholders, etc. But before we get there, it's important that we have a proper mastery of the problem, so that even if we're meeting policymakers, we're not speaking in the air. We're speaking based on, on the reality on the ground, and also having that understanding of what they've done and what we're proposing is also very important, so that we just don't meet them and say, this is what we think we should do. But what we're trying to do is, by listening to you guys, we look at what the policymakers have done themselves, and then based off of that, see what has worked, what hasn't worked, and then try to contextualize our recommendations a bit better. So that's the approach we're using. Mr. Jarvis, we hope that soon we'll actually be doing some on-the-ground training. But I think it's important for us to have a better mastery of the issues first before we propose any changes. All right.
Okay.
Yes, you have the floor.
I think he spoke well. One of the problems, just as you said, there's a major problem. We do not master processing stages. It's an issue. For example, cassava has 70% water. Do you know what that means? So if you have 100 kg of cassava, it means that 70% is water. That's serious. And that's where we come in with research. That research should relook and come up with better varieties that are adapted, that are cost effective. If you take 100 kilograms of cassava to make gari, you only get 22 to 23 kilograms of gari. That is too small. You cannot make a profit out of that. For those who are making water fufu, it's 54 to 56 kg of water fufu. Even though it's wet, but it will not be dripping. You would have squeezed it, really pressed it very hard. So with some of these little details, you realize that process, we need to involve, for example, IRAD, and say, hey, look, our local varieties are not adapted for the value chain. We can, if we want to, we can only boil it or make maybe cassava flour and the rest, but because it's not cost effective. That has to be looked into very critically. Okay. And another issue here is farmers, you may be willing to, but if you do not have the knowledge, the know-how, is a waste of time. Okay. And I remember many projects in Cameroon that I know on cassava projects that failed because the people did not master the processes. They never know what it is. Until you understand the processes, no, trust me, it's just a waste of time. You can take it nowhere. Again, our machines that are being used on the field are not also cost effective. They're not efficient.
Yes, you
So
know
all
that
of that have to be looked at very critically. Because if you ask one of those machine guys, this machine to greater cassava, how many liters of fuel would you need to greater X kilogram of cassava? He will not tell you. And for what period of time? These are specificities that are very important in the cassava value chain, or else at the end of the day, you cannot make profit. And that is why many groups that have been involved have abandoned the project because they are not able to make profit. Because at the end of the day, remember, in the value chain business, all of it is what profit at the end of the day. That's the first thing. Is profit at the end of the day. If we cannot make profit at the end of the day, it's not worth it. So to palliate to this problem, groups, farmer groups, our farming groups are not business oriented. A lot of times they come together, you don't even know what they're up to. And because they are not business oriented, they are not focused on the business of the value chain. And it's a real issue. They can give you all the machines, but if you're not business oriented, if you are not profit or result oriented, it's going to fail. It's going to fail. So our farmers' minds should be fine-tuned to business-oriented activities. It's not just producing it because you have land, because you have this, but business-oriented. It's very important.
okay.
And
But Stella, before you continue, Mr. Nelson, do you want to like give a few points? You know, just regarding the machines, what we learned from one of our friends who does industrial machinery at CEPI is that most of the machines as well are not really adapted for agro transformation because they're just metal, right? Normally they have to use like oxidated machines so that there's no metal residue, because if they use normal machines to grind, locally they might be able to sell, but internationally they would reject their products if they don't make sure that they use oxidized machines. So that's also something that we found. Mr. Nelson, you have the floor. You have to unmute yourself because we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I think Mr. Nelson muted himself again, so he would have to unmute himself and keep himself unmuted.
Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, we can hear you properly. But now you've muted yourself again, so we cannot hear you. Maybe try to just, every time you unmute yourself, it goes back to mute, Mr. Nelson. So we hear you when you say, can you hear me? But after that, we can't hear you.
Maybe it was because I was scrolling to the next folder.
Oh, okay. Possibly.
Right. Yeah, I was saying that we did a project on a cassava in the East region there, somewhere after Betua. And we realized some difficulties. Madam Stella made mention of involving Irad. I think it's a good idea, but as in a policy a way of doing it, I think that only Irad providing the cassava stems is really a challenging, because You know, the cassava stem varieties, those were in different geographic regions, as per like what would do well in in the southwest might not do well in the littoral. What would do well in the center region might not do well in the east region. And just some policies so that we could even adopt could be to have seed multipliers locally that are linked with cooperatives or farming groups. And most of the work have to be done at the level of the government, in that if the government cannot really promote industrial use of cassava, you see that not many businesses will go into cassava production or processing. We are talking of Gary, but we have so many things that can be that cassava can be produced. You have flour, you have ethanol, you have animal feed, you have cassava starch, which I think is gradually replacing a lot of starch that are used even in paint manufacturing and even in breweries. So the government have to really promote the industrial use of cassava, like partial substitution of wheat flours with cassava flours in many bakeries, as a way, as a policy, like a certified way of doing it, so that you start to see that gradual substitution from flour to cassava flour. And we have talked about uh, you need to have, because most of our farmers tend to depend so much on grants and on donations and things like that. I think that if farmers can move away from depending on farming groups or groups that are supporting farmers, really move away from grants and donations, they will do better in that, because grants and donations are not really sustainable. But when farmers or farming organizations really know how to lobby for funds, how to negotiate for good business loans, I think they can do more better. It can be even more sustainable, because grants will take time, and grants might even come in an off season that is not a production season even, and you have to wait, and maybe different things may happen. So I think that as a in a policy way, the government really have to put incentives for private processors, because cassava, like we are talking, will not be done by, it will be in different stages. To upscale the production of cassava will be in different stages. You have those that will be producing just the cassava. Not everybody will be involved in processing. You have, just like you have maize, not everybody is processing maize to corn flour or other byproducts. You have those who just produce maize and sell. You also as well have farmers that will just produce only cassava and sell cassava either in the farm, or they carry it to the small processor or to the market. You have those that will be at that stage. You have those that will be involved in the transformation from the cassava to different products. You have those that will be in the transformation of the different cassava products into, like, it's a whole chain. You have the farmers producing the cassava, you have those that will process the flour, and then you have the bakeries that are using the flours for bread, and yeah, the farmers who are using maybe the cassava feed for feeding the animals. So you have to be an intensive awareness, intentional awareness drive for the increased use of cassava product. And you see that most of
Mm.
the agricultural loans for cassava production are always short term,
Okay.
but cassava is a long term crop. You go and take a loan and they tell you will start to repay in 3 months' time, in 2 months' time. Meanwhile, you are going to harvest that cassava after 1 year or after 2 years, depending on the variety. So I think that there should be some assistance at the part of the government to negotiate good loan terms or business investment terms, because What we actually did in Betua was that we brought in some investors who could invest with some farmers there in Betua, who could invest in some farming organizations. And we realized that most of the investors that we brought were so much interested in having their returns in a very short term. And the cassava process will take up to a year or plus before it starts to yield. That's when it is sold. That is when it is processed and stuff like that. And some were insisting that we should go. The farmer should go in for the Iraq type that yields after 6 months or after 8 months or 9 months. And some of the farmers did not like it because they say they are used to with their local stem. So it's a kind of conflicting between those that are providing the finance and those that are in the field. I think that government policy should actually step in, because you see in the maize sector, it was actually organized somehow in 2017. I was part of a project in the Northwest for corn production that was sponsored by Pitma. It was a bit organized. Farmers were organized, even though the crisis had to hit the project hard. It did not really go successful. But the chain was already organized with the end users, those who buy the maize from the cooperatives, and the cooperatives who engage the farmers and collect from the farmers. So I think that the same approach could be used in the cassava sector. And then talking about ensuring meeting up with the planting approach. I think that the government really needs to recruit and deploy more agricultural extensive agents in the field who can support farmers, who can guide farmers in cassava planting, in the soil fertilization, in the management of the cassava itself, and establish more cassava cooperatives, just like you have more maize cooperatives that were established in the Northwest during the PIDMA project. It was intentional to boost maize production, so they had to establish only maize cooperatives. So I think that the same approach could be used in the cassava sector, where you have many cassava cooperatives. You have small farming organization farming and supplying to the cooperatives. The cooperative is making arrangement with bulk buyers that are processing it. I think that with that, when farmers know that they have a sure market for their cassava, I think they will be expanding their production over the years.
Okay. So I think, well, we promised ourselves that we'd only do 1 hour so that we don't take too much of your time. It's been a while since we had this, so we hope that the next ones will be a bit more properly organized. You guys would receive a set of questions, and then if one or two people want to present, like Madam Stella did today, that would be perfect. So just before we come to an end, I was wondering whether each and every one of you can maybe suggest one or two policy recommendations, something practical that we think policymakers can apply tomorrow.
Okay.
So, Madam Stella, I'll start with you, and then after that, Mr. Jarvis, and then Mr. Nelson, and then the rest of us.
I suggest two things. That we get, like just like this last speaker spoke, I'll say more something on that cassava multiplication. When we have a multiplication farm, the cost of a cutting of 20 to 30 centimeters is cheaper. It moves from 25 francs or is 30 francs per cutting to 15 or 10 francs per cutting. But now that we don't have multiplication farms, the cuttings are really, really expensive. Because to plant 1 hectare, you need a minimum of 300,000 or more. So we suggest that you have individuals who engage in multiplication of cassava stems. That is one. Number two, the groups or the cooperatives should form a kind of they should be in themselves a kind of advocacy group that can sign partnership agreements with the banks or the credit unions where they are. so that the credit union accompany the bank and accompany them in the cassava value chain. They can give the money, they can make this agreement to them. It's very possible. And when I was working in Bangui, we made some agreements with the credit union, and they were able to give us some amount of money. There was no haste, there was no rush. That was a kind of partnership that we sat down with them and spoke, and I mean several meetings that led us to them, taught them how they understood the process, they understood what it takes. They visited us in our processing unit, and now we signed a partnership agreement, and they gave us a certain amount of money, which we're able to repay back. So I think that the groups that are being formed should be business oriented and should be able to sign partnership agreements with financial institutions in order to improve on their to improve on access to whatever they want to make their production increase production and better profit. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jarvis, can you give us, thank you for your recommendations, Madam Stella. Given you've prepared something already, if you can send it to us, that will be helpful so that we can include it in the
Yes,
media reports.
I will. If you send me your email address, I forward it to you now.
All right, perfect. Shall I send it in the group, or I'll just send it in the group so that you have it?
I'll have it. I'll send it to you now.
All right, Mr. Jarvis, your recommendations, please. We have just 5 minutes. We want to try and keep to time.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, and thank you to everyone. I recommend education and training. Yes, if policy makers can help us to educate, help us to have a leeway in order to educate and train more farmers on what we desire to have, the outcomes that we desire to have, I think will be better. I just have just one. Thank you. Over.
All right, so education and training, multiplication of stems, amongst others. Mr. Nelson, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I will recommend the promotion of industrial use of cassava. Yes, there should be a partial substitution of flour with cassava.
Cassava flour. So can I just say that this is what CEPI since 2023, that's one of the things that we included in the report we sent. And if you guys saw in the 2024 finance law, they reduced the value added tax on locally made flour. That's something that we actively fought for. To make sure that bakeries and other manufacturing companies, agro manufacturing companies, can actually buy flour a bit more cheaply, cassava flour locally. So now I think what we are working on now is to make sure that they actually make it the law, right? Maybe on every loaf of bread, maybe 15% has to be cassava flour. So that's something that I think we can also include in whatever report we submit, so that it creates a ready market for cassava producers. Oh, Madam Stella, what do you think? Because if we force them to use the cassava flour, does it not create a local market?
I want to share this experience with you. In the early 2000s, I know at least 6 bakeries in Douala that were doing that. I can give you their names. But what was their problem? There was no constant supply. You're talking about sustainability? Yes. Yeah. There was no constant supply. That was the main problem. I knew them. They were producing croissant using 15% of cassava flour. They were bread. If you go to around Rompion, Troisième, they were there. The bakeries that were there, that's what they were doing. They were using it. But what happened? Sustainability. That was the main issue. That's why I mentioned to you that our groups that we form should be oriented. We are business oriented. There is no continuity, there's no sustainability in our activities.
But
Today,
if
you
we
produce three tons of flour.
you know that there's no source. I wonder whether it's a problem of organization because if, for example, we can link one bakery to 100 producers and they have their 2, 3, 4 hectares, and we know that those are the suppliers, automatically it incentivizes more people to produce a lot more because we actually spoke to a few farmers and before the reforms came into place they were farming, less than 1 hectare. Once the reforms were there, where, there was lower VAT, people were actually more motivated to produce more. So I'm wondering whether should we promote the production first before making the bakeries actually buy local cassava flour, or should we just because once we make it law, people are going to find that cassava. Cassava is one of the only food crops that we produce enough of in Cameroon, right? So far.
Yes, what I suggest is that they can sign contracts, but they start producing, they start supplying, in very small quantity because a lot of contracts were signed. I remember when we were working even with IITA, some NGOs, sorry, some groups signed contracts, some of these bakeries, that at some point they could not meet up. We don't
Okay.
know whether it was that the contracts were too large or
Yeah,
that for
maybe.
whatever reason they could not meet up.
Okay.
Again, we
Which
have an
means that
issue of machines because you want to make cassava flour, my dear, you cannot make it with your hand, grating like
yes,
that,
yes, yes,
whatever.
yes, yes,
We
yes.
need machines.
Yeah,
We
we do.
need
We do.
equipment.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying, that our equipment are not adapted. So if our equipments were adapted, these guys, because if our equipments were adapted, these guys could buy the machines and it's easy. You understand? Do
Yeah.
you know that in Cameroon there is a group, it's somewhere in the central region that produces cassava flour for pharmaceutical industry, for the pharmaceutical industry that is in Yaoundé. Do you believe that? Oh yes, they do. They are there.
I
They,
haven't heard about them, but I think that's what
you
we have
know,
to
they
try and do,
produce.
right? I,
You know, yes, we
so
produce
is
cassava flour for pharmaceutical products like whatever.
uh,
Yes, it's because they say cassava flour is the best compared to yam, rice, and the rest. Is the best. It
plantain
it
and what?
holds. It's able to hold the chemical components of whatever you're talking about. Is it paracetamol, ibuprofen, whatever?
Yeah. Okay.
It is best. Yes, and I remember that this company, the state has an eye on them like red. Go there, you like it. The state is on them like every day. Like, oh, they show the different processes of how it's done, blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah. So you see, the state, when the state knows that you people are producing for some serious thing, they're on behind you. They have all the equipment that you can think of to
Okay.
do it,
So
and they are
well,
respecting. They
I
supply
think
it to the pharmaceutical industry in their own day.
So I think actually that's a great idea.
So
Maybe we're going to see we at CEPI we're going to maybe complete just a policy brief that looks at the how the agro value chain can potentially impact the pharmaceutical sector, and we'll send it to you guys because so that we can because we have to agree on the recommendations. We at CEPI we obviously we're much more business oriented, and we think if you create the market, the production will follow. But I understand that we also have to make sure that there is actual production to meet the demand. So, Mr. Nelson, do you want to give us your recommendation?
one last thing before he speaks, please.
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
just one last sentence. A lot of times it will be good to, my recommendation here is that the end users and the producers should be brought together. So they tell them the specifications, the specificities. Because a lot of times we don't have the specifications, and that's why we cannot maintain some of these contracts. A meeting should be held between the two people, the two set of people, the end users, and they tell you the specifications, what is expected, what is expected, so that the groups are trained in accordance and they can have the necessary equipment that to meet up with these specificities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Nelson, we've gone 10 minutes over, but Mr. Nelson, can you give us your recommendations?
Okay. Another recommendation I would want to add is that um, it's important that there should be a good value value financing value financing that is approved by the state. Value financing in the sense that you have like many of these companies that are processing cassava that rely on cassava as their raw materials. They really lack the business approach in getting this cassava from the farmers. Many of them have not really engaged so many farmers so that to be sure of their throughput in terms of supply of the raw material. And many of them are also not really investing in industrial scale cassava production. Yes. So they rely on farmers, they send agents to go and buy, but now they don't have a value chain financing with the farmers in that you take, for example, you have a program that is financing farmers to sell to you. That's a kind of contract farming with the farmer supported by the state.
Well, okay. You know that in the past we've shown that these types of buyer programs have not succeeded, but maybe, pardon me, maybe we can have maybe next time we can talk about those types of things. But
Yes.
from the 1960s, there have been various buyer programs that have not succeeded. So we are very skeptical of like getting the states involved because they cannot manage the country well, though it's unlikely that they'll be able to manage the agriculture sector well. We are much more focused on making sure that the producers and the buyers can meet and we can establish those lists and make sure that the smallholders are actively contributing to the value chain. So, but I am keeping a recommendation. So, like, a state-driven buying program.
That's not actually the policy. They're not a state-driven buying policy program.
Okay.
We're talking about a buying program by the processing companies, those that use cassava as their raw materials.
Okay.
How can they engage the smallholder farmers effectively to be guaranteed continuous supply of cassava?
Okay. Yep. That I think it's a wonderful. I think that's a good idea. Yes. So we have to make sure that the
Yes,
buyers and the smallholders come together so that there's that consistency. Because if we have a bakery that knows that every year I need 10,000 tons, and each farmer knows that okay, I can do 500 every year. That's the only thing I'll do. Then it kind of creates, stability and sustainability in the value chain. So I think, yeah, definitely. Dr. Egbe, I know you joined us late. Mr. Jameau, Séraphin, do you guys have any recommendations? Jameau, Dr. Egbe, Séraphin, if there are no recommendations, then we shall stick to what Madam Stella, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Jarvis gave us. And okay, so we've run a little bit over time, but it's been a while since we did this. So I take full responsibility because I think it's important that we meet regularly if we're going to try and influence things. So we're going to try and make sure that no matter what happens, we can get together, even if it's just for 40 minutes in a month, just so that we're talking about these things and so that when we present something, it's something that really comes from us. Um, Unfortunately, the two people who've been managing the council have left us, so we are going to try and do without. But after this, we are going to share the report from this working session with all of you guys. And that would also be shared with the Guardian Post and Pan-African Visions for them to publicize what the main findings are. So before we end today, is it possible for everyone to just turn on their cameras so that I can take a screenshot that will be used for the media article? For those who can, smile and, so that I can just stick. Right. Okay. Right. Perfect. Okay, great. So would communicate the reports and the findings from this with you guys, and then once it's approved, we're going to send it off. So thank you guys for taking the time, and we hope we'll be meeting again very soon. Madam Stella, I'm waiting for your notes, please.
Yes. Did you send the?
I sent the email address here and in the group on WhatsApp.
Okay. Okay.
And also, this our first. So we're recording these working sessions because we'll put them on YouTube. So the aim is that every time we talk about something specific, and then we're going to upload it on YouTube to make sure that other people have access to it. And over time, hopefully we can become like the agriculture intelligence over time, where if somebody needs to know about the value chain for cassava or rice or whatever, they simply go to those types of videos. So thank you very much, guys, and have a wonderful start to your week.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you as well, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.